Did you know that in 2016, about 24 million people in the US reported that they were current marijuana users? That's nearly 9% of the US population. Good afternoon, professor and class. Today we are going to be diving into the history of this eclectic plant. I've spent some quality time researching the evolution of marijuana use and social standards, and I want to talk about its past, present, and future. Let's break down the evolution and its newfound developments. First, we'll discuss the origin of marijuana in the US. Second, we'll talk about why it became illegal. Lastly, we are going to look into what the marijuana industry has done to America's economy. Let's get started with the background history of this infamous plant because it's been around a lot longer than you think. The first documented use of marijuana was in the 1600s, and it was used for domestic production of goods like clothing and rope. That means it started off as being legal. This form of marijuana was actually encouraged because it allowed people to create various necessary items to live and a form of income. The Educational Foundation of Marijuana's timeline came out with information in 2014 that apparently in 1619, Virginia Assembly passed legislation requiring every single farmer to grow it, and it was allowed to be used as a legal tender, aka money. And according to the same source, from the 1600s to the 1900s, the marijuana production flourished, and it was actually starting to become a staple in most medicines. Up until that point, marijuana was solely used for the purpose of physical materials and medicinal needs. However, things changed in 1910 when America experienced the Mexican Revolution. After the revolution, Mexican immigrants flooded into the US and introduced the process of smoking and recreationally using marijuana to Americans. Olivia B. Waxman stated the influx of refugees in the U.S. contributed to the growing negative sentiment around marijuana, and the U.S. began to have fear that the recreational use of marijuana could trigger violent, savage responses in its users. In her article on the surprising link between U.S. marijuana laws and immigrants in 2019. Once fear was associated with marijuana, the laws prohibiting it began to take place. In 1932, the Uniform Narcotic Act was the first one to be created to restrict the use of marijuana amongst other drugs. And PBS stated in the article America's War on Marijuana in 2014 that the growing illegal activity fighting against the restrictions from 1932 to 1996 created agencies like the Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs in 1968 and the most well-known the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency, aka the DEA, in 1973. So far we've covered the history. Now let's discuss the legalization. The growing list of laws halted for California when Proposition 215 was passed in 1996. The era of using marijuana in positive and healing aspects started to form again. Proposition 215 allowed people with medical ailments to get a physician's approval to buy marijuana legally for medicinal purposes. Medical doctor Neil Lava stated in 2018 that marijuana helped thousands of people overcome anxiety, seizures, and physical pain issues. By 2017, the California legislation had legalized recreational marijuana use for adults 21 years and older. Many states have followed since then, and this is according to the California Department of Health in 2018. Fast forward a few years, and now we are starting to see marijuana in cooking. Lowell Herb Company is the first cannabis-infused restaurant to open in the United States as of 2019, according to Katie Shapiro, who wrote an article about it in 2019 in Forbes. Edibles, which are marijuana-infused food or desserts, are expected to see a growth of use by 108% by next year, according to Mary Jane Is the U.S. market for weed edibles actually booming by Vice in 2018. Alright, we've learned about the history and legality aspects. Now let's look into the effects that the marijuana industry has on the economy. Since it has been legalized, there has been a creation of thriving new careers. The industry has positively impacted the economy, and the industry profits are predicted to grow every year. So if you think farming with animals is too much work with very little pay, check out what a ganja farmer or distributor brings in. Marijuana salaries explained by hemp staff in 2019 stated a master marijuana grower brings in between $80,000 to $150,000 a year, and a dispensary owner can bring in $40,000 to $95,000 a year. And the profitability is going nowhere but up, because the same source states that last year the legal marijuana industry raked in $9 billion in sales in the US and is expected to grow $21 billion every year by 2021. In a nutshell, we have learned marijuana was used for physical goods, then deemed illegal, and ultimately it became legal again and formed a billion-dollar industry. Overall, for a plant, it sure has caused a lot of controversy. It has a long-standing history. And in conclusion, marijuana started off as a moneymaker, and despite its rocky legal issues, by 2021, it has proved that it did not stray far from its financial roots. Thanks, you guys. I hope you enjoyed my speech. That is my topic of history of marijuana. Thank you so much.